Right, today we're going to talk about mandalas and how to design them, and this is for our color wheel project that we're going to be doing. So on your next sketchbook page that you have available in your sketchbook, I want you to write at the top mandala, and then we're going to write the definition. So a mandala, and what a mandala is, it's a spiritual and ritual symbol in Indian religions that represents the universe. In its basic form, it's a square with 4 gates containing a circle with a center point. So once we start looking at them, I think you will recognize them, but let's go ahead and write the definition down so we kind of understand what we're working on, which is a spiritual symbol, a spiritual and ritual symbol in Indian religions representing the universe. Okay, so that's basically what a mandala is as far as the definition goes. We're also going to write down the elements and principles of art we're going to be using in this project. So I'm going to write elements over here, principles over here, and you should be familiar with the elements. And we are going to introduce the principles as we go through projects to learn them and discuss how you use them to create art. And basically with the principles is putting elements together to create the principles. So elements are kind of like the ingredients of art, and principles are what you get when you put them together, I guess. So the elements we're going to be using for this project are color, line, shape, and value. All right. The principles we're going to be using are unity, balance, and more specifically, we're going to be using radial balance, and we're going to be using repetition. Sometimes that's referred to as rhythm, but repetition, and that helps create the unity. So those are our elements and principles for this project. All right, so this is basically what we're writing in our sketchbook for today. You have a sheet of paper like this that's about 12 inches by, let's see how many, 6, so it's 12 by 6, and I want you to fold it in half. And it should fit there at the bottom below your information, because we're going to glue this in later, but because we're going to be painting on it, we don't want to have it in our sketchbooks now so that we can put it on the drying rack. So what we're going to talk about now is how to draw these sections of a mandala on here. So you have a template that you're going to be tracing. It looks like a little piece of pie. And you need to trace 3 of them. And I'm going to use a marker, but I want you to use a pencil, but the pencils won't show up on the camera. So I want you to trace 3 of these pie sections at least. Now you might, after you get started, want to trace some more, but for now 3, and just lightly, either using just a regular number 2 pencil or an H. Don't use really soft pencils. Use the H's because we want it light. I'm tracing it. I am tracing kind of the bottom, which on this particular template is very crooked, but these are just our trials, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to trace the closing on 2, but on the 3rd one, I'm not going to trace the bottom part. I want it to be open-ended. And there's a reason for that. So if you accidentally got ahead of me and trace the bottom, go ahead and erase that so that your last one is open like this. Okay? So once you've done that, what you're going to do is kind of make some marking and measurements. And we're going to do 3 different types as practice, and then you're going to design your own. And we're going to use these practices to experiment with our paint on. So you need to make sure you do these neatly, and this might end up being your design for your final project, but it might not. So the first one we're going to do is just alternating line styles, and I want you to write that at the bottom. Alternating line styles. And this is the simplest one to do. So we're going to start with the simplest, but we do have to do some measurements. So you should have a ruler. If you just have one ruler in your table group, the compasses in your boxes, they have a measurement here on the side that fits this particular shape, almost, just a little bit short. We need to have a minimum of 6 sections. So what you need to have is at least 5 different parts or different lines to make those 6 sections. And because when you're doing a mandala, you want them to match up, where the line starts and ends needs to be equal on both sides of your pie. So what I'm going to do, this is, let's use the big ruler. I'm going to measure from the top here. It's about a 4.5 in length. So I'm going to mark the first one at the 4, and I'm just going to do a little pencil mark here. Then I'm going to mark at 4 and, or really, I guess it's 3 1/4 right here. Then I'm going to mark it 2 1/4, 1 1/2, and maybe that's 3/4. So it doesn't really matter where you mark them. You just have to remember, so when you move it over here, you know where you're marking them, because you can't just draw a straight line across, because it won't be at the same place because it's at an angle. So my first one was at 4, so I'm going to write over here 4. My second one was at 3 1/4, so I'm going to write 3 1/4. Here, this one was at 2 1/4, so 2 1/4. This one was at 1 1/2, and this one was at 3/4. All right, I'm going to come over here, making sure that I just move the ruler like this to the other side. If you flip it like this, your lines are going to be in the wrong place. So make sure that you started here. If you started from the top, measure down, you just move this over here. And now I'm going to mark it almost the same one. So my first one was 3/4, which is right here. 1 1/2 is here. 2 1/4 here. 3 1/4 and 4. Okay, so now I have my marks on both sides. So I know my line has to start where that mark is, and it has to end where that mark is. Okay, now you can use the circle templates or your compass as a straight edge in areas if you want. For this first one near the point here, and I know y'all can't see my marks, let me make my marks in red. I'm going to use the circle template because I want a rounded line and I don't want to just guess. So I'm going to find a circle on one of these templates that fits where I want it and make sure that the marks line up as closely as I can make them line up. On your circle template, you'll notice, I don't know if y'all can see it, but right here, right there, so there's little lines here and on the sides of each circle. I don't think I have this flipped around backwards. It's probably easier to see from here. But if you look on there, and that will help you line it up. So if you know where the center of this is, which right here we know the center is right there, and I line up this line that's right here with the center, then and just try to make sure it's as straight as it can, I know that I'm getting a center arc here. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm just going to slide it forward to my lines, and I'm going to draw just that little part of the curve right there, which I'm going to have to do in black so y'all can see it. Just like that. So that's my first line, just straight, smooth, rounded line. All right, the next line I'm going to do is a wavy line, and I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to wavy and come back here. All right, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to do it just like mine, just a wavy line. The next line I'm going to do is a pointed line, and I'm going to start here, and I'm just guesstimating. You can measure out the center if you would like, and I'm going to do a line here. The next line is a zigzag line. Start here, always ending on the same point that you started. And then my last one, I'm going to make just a little bit more complicated because this is the outer edge of the mandala. This is the center point here, and this is the outer edge. So I kind of want something maybe a little bit more decorative here on the outside. So I'm going to start with just doing a light pencil line to connect these two marks here. And I'm just sketching it out really to get like a curve because I don't want to go beyond that part. And then I'm going to use a circle template and make like a scalloped edge. So I'm going to find a circle that fits kind of where I want it to fit so that it goes to the top. So this one looks like it. No, maybe a little bit bigger. Because I want the halfway point to be on that line that I just drew. So I'm going to go with this circle right here. And I'm going to take my pen so y'all can see it. And I have lined up the little lines on the circle at the middle with the line I sketched on that is the connecting line. And so that I know only half of the circle is getting drawn on here. So you can see I drew that little half of the circle. Now this is my circle. I'm going, right, let's just make sure, yep. I'm going to move this over and make sure both of my lines are on here. And you can see I'm leaving a little bit out so I can connect it. Okay, and then, all right, so had I measured, this would have worked just perfectly, but as you see right now, I'm going to go off the side, and I don't want to do that because I want it to match. So what I'm going to do is cheat a little bit, and I'm going to switch to a little bit smaller circle until it kind of fits. This one fits. I'm putting the lines on the line again, so it's not going to be as tall as the other two, but like I said, these do not have to be perfect. All right, so now I have my scalloped edge. All right, so that's the first one, and that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if you count this 6 out here, if I wanted to close off and create one more section, if I wanted my outside edge to be this part, then I could draw another line in between one of these sections and erase this outer line so that the outside edge was the circular edge. But as it stands right now, this is my outside edge, which creates my 6th section. And remember, you have to have a minimum of 6. So what we did that were to help us with this was doing our measurements on the side, different types of line styles. I marked my measurements over here when I did them over here, so I knew which side they were on, and that's the first one. Okay, all right, so the next one is we're going to do shapes, and we're going to do this by folding it in half, and we're not going to fold this in half, but we are only going to draw on half of it for now. So what I'm going to do is find the center point of my triangle. So I'm going to measure here at the bottom. And if I measure across at the bottom, it's 2 1/4. So it's 2 1/4 across. Yours should be very similar to that, but you should measure it. So half of 2 1/4. So if it was just 2, half would be 1, right? And then half of a quarter is an 1/8. So an 1/8 is the first. Okay, there's the second mark past the 1. So there's a 1, and then there's a 1/16 mark, and then there's a 1/8 mark. So I'm going to mark that on here. So that's my center point right here. Then I'm going to take my pencil and my ruler, and I'm going to put my pencil at the top on the tip point, slide my ruler up against it, and then to that dot at the bottom, and then I'm going to make a light line. I'm going to make mine dark so you can see it, but I want you to just make a light line down the center. All right, so that's your half of your pie piece. So on just the left side, I'm going to draw shapes, and I'm just going to draw half of the shape. Now there's different ways you can do this. This can be abstract. You can draw things that are symmetrical. So for this example that I did last night when I was practicing, I drew half of a sun, half of a turtle, half of a fish. My turtle turned out kind of skinny, but it worked. You don't have to do it like this. For another example I did last night, I drew shapes like this, just geometric shapes, and it turned out like this here when I put it together. So doesn't really matter what which one you do, but you need to have 6 sections. So I suggest 3 or 4 or 5 shapes possibly, and then maybe a line or somewhere in the background to break it up. So I'm just going to do some random things. You can use your templates for this if you would like. So for the on the bottom, I'm going to do a half of a circle. I'm going to use my little lines on my template, match it up, and draw that. Go back to my pen so y'all can see it. All right, so I have that, and I think I'm going to make that a moon. Well, no, I'm not going to. Never mind. All right, so I have the half circle, and then I'm going to add maybe a half of a triangle here. And they could be organic shapes, so they don't have to be geometric. And then also a good time to try something like that. So I'm just going to draw like a random type shape to see what that looks like when you mirror it on the other side. So right now, if I count and I go, okay, I have 1, 2, 3, and if you count the background, that's 4 sections. I need a 6 minimum. So I'm going to do something down here. I'm just going to draw a line down here that goes at an angle, and it's creating a shape right here, right, with these things. So I just drew a line there, and then I'm going to go back to my circle template and draw another circle here. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it has the background, but I think I am going to still draw one line in the background to just kind of separate this a little bit more. And I think I'm just going to do it right here, like that. All right, so I have this. And what I'm going to do now is use some tracing paper and trace it. And of course, I didn't bring any over here with me. So I'm going to go grab some tracing paper really fast. So get out your tracing paper, and your sheet will be smaller than this. And what you're going to do is trace your design on your tracing paper here. And just really carefully, you want to get it exactly like you had it before. I'm using pen. You're going to be using pencil. That's just so you can see it. Okay, so I'm tracing the design. I'm also going to trace the shape of the pie shape, so I know how to line everything up. So if you need to use a ruler on this part that you line up to it, that's fine. I'm going to put that center line in just so I can see it when I go to line up. I probably should have used a ruler because it's kind of crooked right here. Okay, so I have, and I think, let me line that back up again. I'm just going to mark the center with like a dashed line so I can see it. All right, now that I have this, I'm going to use the graphite paper. And the graphite paper is the gray paper that you have, and graphite paper has 2 sides, and you need to make sure you put the right side down or it won't transfer. So it has a slick side that's darker, and then it has a lighter side that's not as slick. And you can test it out if you want by just putting it down somewhere on your paper and just with your pencil make a little mark, pick it up, and see if it transferred. And you can see there's a little mark right there. So what I'm going to do is I have my tissue paper one, so I'm going to flip it over like this. And I'm going to line it up with the pie where I do the first half. And I'm going to line it up with nothing under it right now. So as perfectly as I can, I'm going to match everything up so that the lines meet in the right places. Now I'm going to hold my tissue paper with my hand and slide my graphite paper underneath it. And it really only has to be on one side because you're only tracing one side over and transferring it. So like this. All right, so now it's underneath this. And now I'm just going to go over the lines. And I'm just going to go over the shape lines because I don't need the outside lines. I just need the interior shape lines. So I'm going over it with my pencil and just making sure I press down. This is not a time to press lightly. This is the time to press down so that it does transfer. And sometimes the the transfer paper has been used several times and it gets the marks on it like you see right here. You can still use that. It's okay if your transfer isn't perfectly dark, and you can just connect the lines. So I'm just going to finish off this line here, carry it out to the edge, same one here. And you can see now that by putting together my shapes and symmetry, how that created a design. All right, so this one is the one where we used shapes. So at the bottom of this one, where'd my pen go? I want you to write shapes dash tracing paper to flip image, because remember we flipped it over, dot, and then a period, and then put transfer paper. It's also called graphite paper. All right, so that's our second kind. All right, now we have one more, and the last one is freeform, which means you can draw whatever you want. Now it might not, you still have to think about where the lines meet on each side, so you still need to make kind of marks on how you do that. So using your ruler, you can measure it like we did before. My example that I did last night looks like this. I have just a rounded edge. I drew a fish. I drew a wave. I made sure those lines met up. So anything that meets or touches the edges needs to meet at the same side, so it will continue on in the pattern. And then I did a half circle on each side, and I made one a sun and one a moon. And then I put mountains at the top. And this one that we left open, we want to have kind of a design at the top. So if you're comfortable with drawing freehand things, you only have to draw it once because we're going to use the transfer paper, so you don't need to pressure that you have to draw it the same each time. But you know, this is one where you kind of draw something that you want or that you like or that you're interested in, and it's just a little bit more creative and personalized. So when you're thinking about the mandala and how it represents the universe, you could try to draw, you know, imagery within this freeform one that represents maybe your universe, you know, your world, your day-to-day life. You could represent, you know, the universe in general, like environmentally in nature. Just a lot of different things. So think about, you know, I guess maybe kind of like a theme that you could put with it and not just random objects. So on this one, you just draw whatever you want. So I think I'll do one that's kind of based on a flower, just because that's fairly simple. So I'm going to use my circle template still at times. So this will be the center of the flower. And then now I'm pretty much just going to freeform it or freestyle it. But I still have to measure like where my lines and stuff start and end. So I want to do like a little jagged edge here. So I'm going to mark it. This is just 1 centimeter here. I don't want to mark it over here at 1 centimeter, so they're close. So this one, I'm going to do scalloped edge for the interior part of the flower, and just remembering that anytime it goes up, like this one doesn't meet perfectly, so it's going to look a little funky. Then I'm going to do some petals here, I think, and I'm going to start with a center one here. And then I'm going to try to do half of one on each side. So the freeform is a little bit riskier on getting it to turn out right, and it might just take some tweaking as you repeat it to see what it's going to look like. I'm going to add some shapes within this petal on both sides, like that. All right, and then I'm going to keep going, and maybe I'm going to add a leaf. Maybe it's the leaf of the flower coming out here. I don't know, maybe I'll do another row of petals. I think another row of petals will be better before I get to the leaf. All right. So nothing's going to the edge here. These edges, they match close enough. I should have measured those and made sure they matched, but I didn't. And then the last part I'm going to do is, I don't know. I could do like a butterfly or something. I'm going to do a leaf or something, but so just drawing something on here, and I'm kind of in my space of my word over there. So this is kind of a leaf here, and if I wanted to put something here like maybe more petals or something else, I could. So I still need to have 6 minimum spaces. So I'm going to count and see what I have. Now you can have more than 6, but when we get ready to paint these, you don't want tiny spaces because it makes it more difficult to paint and it will take you longer. So let's see how many I have. I have 1, 2, if I count all 3 of these as one section, that would be 3, 4, 5. So I need something here in the background to really make that. And I think what I'm going to do is kind of create maybe the edge of like a pot that you would plant it in here to create that last section. Oh, I should have measured that one too. All right, so now that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if I wanted to be a little bit ambitious, I could have 7 sections, and that would be fine too to kind of complete this. Or you'll be working in pencil, you can erase this part of it, right? That extra part that sticks out. So that's the free form one. I don't know why I just wrote form on there, but I'm going to write free here. Free form, and it's drawing based. Still need to measure lines that touch the edges. Okay, so those are your 3 different styles here. And if you like one of those and you want to try to use one of those for your pattern, that's great. But if you don't, that's fine. You can create